I have 3 childhood friends. When my family went broke, our parents arranged a matchmaking dinner, hoping I'd marry one of them. I should have known it would be a disaster. Alex, the rebel everyone adored, glanced at me with thinly veiled irritation. "No way," he said casually. "She's more like one of the guys. I'm into sweet girls." Luke, the gentle one who used to trail after me as a kid, scratched the back of his neck. "Sorry, you've always been like a big sister to me." Then came Mason, the golden boy, smart, perfect, and colder than anyone had a right to be. He didn't even bother to look up when he spoke. "She's too impulsive. Not the kind of woman I'd ever marry." The room fell silent. My parents tried to laugh it off, but I saw the flicker of pain in my mother's eyes. That was the moment I realized it was time to stop holding on to childish dreams. So I lifted my chin and smiled. "Actually, Mom, Dad, I already have a boyfriend." You could have heard a pin drop. Alex and Luke both turned sharply toward me, their expressions startled. Mason finally looked up, his eyes sharp and unreadable. I kept my voice calm. "If I'd known this dinner was meant for matchmaking, I would have told you sooner. Would have saved everyone the trouble." They're right, though. We grew up together. I could never see them as anything more than brothers. My parents exchanged uneasy glances. They'd arranged everything behind my back, afraid I'd be too embarrassed to come if I knew their true intentions. Apparently, Luke had been their first choice. He was the safest bet, always kind and harmless. They hadn't expected the other two to show up. I couldn't even be angry with them. Mostly, I just felt sad for my parents, for myself, and for how far we'd fallen. When I was younger, my mother once asked if I liked anyone. I remember blushing and refusing to answer. She saw right through me, of course. "Is it one of the boys?" she teased. I'd snapped at her never to bring it up again, which only confirmed her suspicion. After that, I buried my feelings so deep that no one could ever guess who I had fallen for. Then my father's investments failed, and everything came crashing down. The families that once treated us like equals slowly drifted away. My mother, knowing how prideful I was, must have realized I'd never confess my feelings now that we'd lost our status. So she took one last gamble. This dinner, this ridiculous attempt to help me before I locked my heart away for good. She never imagined those same boys who grew up sharing my home-cooked lunches and childhood laughter would humiliate me so easily. By then, I should have been used to disappointment. But seeing my parents force smiles while being humiliated like that, it broke something inside me. My chest tightened, that old ache pressing in until I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "You don't look like you want to eat anyway," I said coldly, scanning their faces. "Let's just end this here." My parents got up in awkward silence and went ahead to get the car. I was about to follow when someone grabbed my arm. I turned and found Alex glaring at me, irritation flickering across his face. "Your temper's gotten worse," he muttered. "Weren't you supposed to be on leave? Since when do you have a boyfriend? Who is he? How old? Do I know him?" The questions came like bullets, sharp, quick, and suffocating. I knew this game. He'd act concerned, get me to open up, then mock me until I wished I'd stayed silent. I wasn't falling for it again. I jerked my arm free. "It's none of your business." He froze, staring at the hand I'd just pushed away. The smug grin vanished, replaced by a frown that deepened by the second. Then Luke peeked over his shoulder, flashing that boyish smile that used to melt everyone. "Why so touchy?" His tone was light, teasing, but his words dripped poison. "Don't tell me you really found some random guy out there. What? Are the 3 of us not enough for you?" His grin widened and he added softly, "How cheap." Luke loved to act like I had them all wrapped around my finger, as if I was some spoiled princess surrounded by doting admirers. But the truth was the opposite. I was the one always chasing after them, desperate to belong. For years I convinced myself their teasing was harmless, just boys being boys. Sure, they played pranks, made jokes at my expense, but they also defended me sometimes. They invited me to hang out. We grew up together. That had to mean something, right? Then one incident shattered that illusion completely. I realized then, I wasn't their friend. I was their toy. Something to laugh at, to use, to toss aside when they got bored. Luke was still smirking, waiting for me to react. I stared at him blankly, then turned and walked away. I'd barely taken a few steps when a cold voice called out behind me. "When are you coming back to class?" I paused but didn't look back. "In a few days," I said evenly. Behind me, Luke gave an exaggerated sigh. Wow, no wonder you treated him better than us. You still have a soft spot for your ex, huh? His tone was mocking now, deliberately loud enough for everyone to hear. It was ridiculous, but that was Luke, always pushing, always trying to get a rise out of me. Of the three, Mason had been the harshest. During the dinner, he'd been the one who looked me in the eye and said I was reckless and stupid. That he'd never marry someone like me. Yet he was also the one who had once confessed to me first. Unlike their families, old money, generations deep, the Wilsons were newcomers. My father had struck gold during a financial boom, and suddenly we were among the elites. But people whispered behind our backs, calling us pretenders, the nouveau riche who didn't belong. They said we'd fall as quickly as we rose. I'd been young then, angry, ready to fight every insult. But my father had stopped me. If we want to survive among them, he said, we have to build connections, not enemies. So I swallowed my pride and played along. I learned to laugh things off, to act like I didn't care. I followed those three everywhere from grade school to college, trying to fit in, to prove I belonged in their world. And, for a long time, I thought I'd succeeded. I thought they were my best friends. But when my father's investments collapsed and the market crashed, everything changed. They turned distant overnight. Calls went unanswered. Invitations disappeared. It was like I'd never existed. At first, I was confused. Then reality sank in. Our friendship had never been equal. I'd been tolerated, not cherished. So this time, when they treated me coldly, I didn't beg or chase after them. I simply kept to myself, focused on school, and tried to move on. Until the night I was kidnapped. The kidnapping wasn't random. I knew that from the start. It happened 3 weeks after the disastrous dinner, on a Tuesday night when the campus was nearly deserted. I'd stayed late at the library, avoiding my cramped apartment and the pitying looks from neighbors who'd heard about my family's downfall. The parking lot was dark, half the lights broken and never repaired. I should have been more careful, but exhaustion made me careless. I didn't notice the van until it was too late. They grabbed me from behind. 2 men, professional, efficient. A cloth over my mouth, chemical sweet and suffocating. I tried to fight, but my limbs went heavy, the world tilting sideways as darkness swallowed everything. When I woke up, I was in a warehouse. Concrete floor, rusty metal beams, the smell of oil and decay. My hands were zip-tied behind my back, my head pounding from whatever they'd used to knock me out. A man stepped out of the shadows. Mid-40s, expensive suit, a scar running down his left cheek. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Wilson," he said, and my blood ran cold. He knew my father's name, the name we'd taken when we tried to climb the social ladder. "Your father owes a considerable debt. We're here to collect." I forced myself to stay calm. My father's business collapsed. There's nothing left to collect. "Oh, we know." His smile widened. "That's why we're collecting you instead." He pulled out his phone, started recording. "You're going to call someone. Someone with money. And you're going to convince them to pay for your release." He leaned closer, his breath hot against my face. "I suggest you make it convincing." My mind raced. My parents had nothing. Our old friends had abandoned us. Who could I possibly call? Then it hit me, the 3 people who'd publicly rejected me just weeks ago. The 3 people whose families still had everything we'd lost. The kidnappers seemed to read my thoughts. "I hear you grew up with some very wealthy young men," he said softly. "Childhood friends. Surely one of them would be willing to help." My stomach twisted. This wasn't random at all. Someone had told them about me, about my connections. Someone had set this up. "Make the call," he said, holding out a phone. "Or, we start sending your parents pieces of you until someone pays attention." My hands shook as I held the phone. 3 numbers saved in the contacts. Alex, Luke, Mason. The kidnapper watched me, with cold amusement. "Choose wisely. You only get 1 call. If they don't answer, or if they refuse." He let the threat hang in the air. I stared at the 3 names, my mind spinning. Alex would probably think it was a prank, hang up laughing. Luke might listen but would assume I was exaggerating, looking for attention. Mason. Mason had always been the smartest of the 3. Cold, calculating, but thorough. If anyone would take this seriously, it would be him. I pressed his name. The phone rang once. Twice. On the 3rd ring, he picked up. Hello. His voice was crisp, professional. He didn't recognize the number. Mason. My voice cracked. I cleared my throat, tried again. It's me. Silence on the other end. Then, why are you calling from an unknown number? Listen to me carefully. I kept my voice steady, aware of the kidnapper's eyes on me. I'm in trouble. Real trouble. Is this about the dinner? His tone turned cold. If you're calling to apologize or make some dramatic gesture, I've been kidnapped. The words came out flat, matter of fact. They want ransom money. $500,000. If you don't pay, they're going to kill me. Another beat of silence. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, sharper, alert. Put them on. I handed the phone to the kidnapper. He took it with a smirk, clearly enjoying this. Mr. Chen, he said smoothly. I'm glad to see the young lady chose someone sensible. Here's how this works. What happened next, I couldn't hear clearly. The kidnapper walked away, speaking in low tones. I caught fragments. Wire transfer. 24 hours. Come alone. When he returned, he was smiling. Your friend is very cooperative. Almost too cooperative. He studied me with new interest. Makes me wonder what you are to him exactly. I said nothing. My heart was pounding so hard I thought he might hear it. We'll see if he follows through, the kidnapper continued. In the meantime, you'll stay here. Behave, and you might leave with all your fingers. He left me alone in the darkness, hands still bound, mind racing. Why had Mason agreed so quickly? He'd made it clear at dinner that I meant nothing to him. Was it guilt? Obligation? Or something else entirely? I didn't have to wait long for answers. Mason arrived exactly 6 hours later, not alone, and not with the money. I heard the commotion before I saw anything. Shouting, gunshots, the screech of tires. The warehouse door burst open and suddenly there were police everywhere, tactical gear and weapons drawn. In the chaos, I spotted him. Mason, standing near the entrance with 2 other figures I recognized even in the dim light. Alex and Luke had come too. The rescue was efficient, professional. The kidnappers didn't stand a chance. They'd been set up, cornered before they even knew what was happening. Within minutes, it was over. An officer cut my zip ties and wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. I was shaking, though whether from cold or shock, I couldn't tell. Mason approached slowly, his expression unreadable. Are you hurt? I shook my head. How did you? I tracked the phone. He said it like it was obvious. Called the police, then called them. He gestured to Alex and Luke, who stood a few feet away, looking strangely subdued. Alex stepped forward, his usual cocky grin replaced by something raw and uncomfortable. Jesus Christ, he muttered. When Mason called, I thought. He broke off, running a hand through his hair. I thought it was a joke. It wasn't a joke, I said quietly. Luke, for once, had nothing snide to say. He just stared at me, his face pale, looking younger than I'd seen him in years. The police needed statements. I answered their questions mechanically, my voice distant, like I was describing something that happened to someone else. The kidnappers had confessed quickly once they realized they'd been caught. My father's old business partner had set the whole thing up, trying to squeeze money from anyone still connected to our family. You'll need to stay somewhere safe tonight, the detective said. Do you have family nearby? I'll take her. We all turned. Mason stood with his hands in his pockets, his expression as cold and controlled as ever. She can stay at my place. It's secure. Alex frowned. Your place? Why not? Because I have actual security. Mason cut him off. And because I'm the one she called. There was something in his tone that made Alex back down. Luke looked like he wanted to argue, but didn't. I wanted to refuse. I wanted to tell them all to leave me alone, that I didn't need their help or their pity. But I was exhausted and terrified, and I didn't trust myself to be alone. Fine, I whispered. Mason's apartment was exactly what I'd expected. Minimalist, expensive, coldly perfect. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine, not a speck of dust or disorder anywhere. He led me to the guest room without a word, handed me clean clothes, showed me where the bathroom was. "Get some rest," he said. "We'll talk in morning." But I couldn't rest. I showered, scrubbing away the smell of the warehouse and the feel of those hands grabbing me. I changed into the clothes he'd given me, soft cotton, expensive, swallowing me whole. Then I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing, my mind replaying everything. Why had he helped me? Why had any of them come? Around 3 in the morning, I gave up on sleep and wandered into the living room. Mason was there, standing by the windows, still dressed, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "Can't sleep either?" he asked without turning around. "No." I crossed my arms, suddenly aware of how vulnerable I looked in his oversized clothes. "Why did you come for me?" "You called me." "That's not an answer." He took a long drink, then finally turned to face me. In the dim light, he looked tired, the kind of tired that came from years of carrying something heavy. "Do you remember," he said slowly, "when we were 16? That summer before everything fell apart?" I remembered. It had been the best summer of my life. We'd spent every day together, swimming, hiking, staying up late talking about nothing and everything. It was the summer I'd realized I was in love with him. It was also the summer he'd confessed to me first. "You told me you loved me," I said softly. "Under the oak tree in your backyard. You said I was the only person who saw you as more than just the perfect son, the genius student. You said I made you feel human. And you turned me down." The words hung between us like a blade. "I didn't." I started, but he raised a hand. "You said we were too young, that we should focus on school, that you didn't want to risk our friendship." He set down his glass. "I understood. I respected your decision. But then everything changed. My family went broke. And suddenly, I was the enemy." His voice was bitter now. "You stopped talking to me. Stopped looking at me. I thought maybe you blamed me somehow, or maybe you were just ashamed. So I gave you space. I waited for you to come back. You never reached out," I said, my voice cracking. "None of you did. You all just disappeared. Because you pushed us away." The outburst startled both of us. Mason took a breath, regaining control. "Every time I tried to talk to you, you shut me down." Alex and Luke said the same thing. "We thought you didn't want our pity, that you needed time." "I needed my friends," I whispered. "I needed someone to tell me it would be okay. And I needed you to let me in." He stepped closer. "But you built walls so high I couldn't climb them. The dinner was your mother's idea. She called mine, worried sick about you. She said you'd stopped eating, stopped leaving your apartment except for class. She begged for help." I felt tears prick my eyes. "So that dinner was an intervention of sorts. Your mother thought if she could get us all together, maybe one of us could break through to you. She didn't tell us it was a matchmaking dinner because she knew we'd refuse. She just said you needed help." "Then why?" My voice broke. "Why did you all reject me so cruelly?" Mason's expression hardened. "Because you came in there looking at us like we were strangers. Like we were the enemy." Alex got defensive, made a stupid joke. Luke followed his lead. "And I." He paused. "I was angry. Angry that you'd shut me out for 2 years, and now suddenly we were supposed to fix everything over dinner. So I said the cruelest thing I could think of. That I was too impulsive. That you'd never marry someone like me. I wanted to hurt you the way you'd hurt me." He looked away. "I succeeded. The look on your face." He laughed bitterly. I hated myself the moment the words left my mouth. But it was too late. We stood in silence, 2 years of misunderstanding and pain filling the space between us. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" I asked. "Would you have listened?" He met my eyes. "Would you have believed me?" He was right. I wouldn't have. I'd been so convinced they'd abandoned me, so wrapped up in my own hurt and shame, that I couldn't see anything else. "When you called tonight," Mason continued quietly, "when I heard the fear in your voice, I realized I'd wasted 2 years being angry when I should have been fighting harder to reach you. So I called the police. I called Alex and Luke. And we came for you. To ease your guilt. To save you." He stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. Because despite everything, despite the walls and the silence and the pain, I never stopped caring about you. My breath caught. I know this changes nothing, he said. I know you probably still see me as the enemy. But I needed you to know the truth. You deserve that much. Morning came with unexpected visitors. I woke to voices in the living room, raised, angry, unmistakably Alex. I pulled on yesterday's clothes and emerged to find all three of them in Mason's apartment. Alex paced like a caged animal while Luke sat on the couch, uncharacteristically serious. Mason stood with his arms crossed, looking exhausted. Finally, Alex said when he saw me, "Tell Mason he's being ridiculous. You're coming to stay with me." "No, she's not," Mason said coolly.
"Why?"
"Because you rescued her." Alex's voice dripped with sarcasm. "We all came for her. You don't get to play hero and keep her locked up here like some princess in a tower. This isn't about playing hero." "Then what is it about?" Luke interrupted quietly. Both of them turned to look at him. He was staring at me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "Why did you really call Mason? Out of all of us?" The question hung in the air. I could feel all three of them watching me, waiting. "I called him because I thought he'd actually listen," I said finally. "Because he's always been the most reliable when things matter." Something flickered across Luke's face. Hurt, maybe, or something darker. Reliable. Right. He laughed without humor. "Is that what you call someone who told you to your face you weren't worth marrying?" "Luke," Mason warned. "No, let's talk about this." Luke stood up. "Let's talk about how you all treated her at that dinner. How we all sat there and humiliated her and her parents. Let's talk about what kind of friends do that." "You called her cheap," Alex said, his voice low and dangerous. "Don't act like you're better than us." "I'm not." Luke's composure cracked. "That's the point. We're all terrible. We've all been terrible to her for years, and now we're fighting over who gets to pretend they're the good guy." The silence that followed was suffocating. "He's right," I said quietly. All three of them looked at me. "You've all hurt me. Some more than others, but you've all played your part in making me feel worthless." Alex opened his mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. "But Mason told me the truth last night. About the dinner, about my mother's call, about everything." I took a breath. "I want to hear your sides too. All of it. No more games, no more deflection. If we're going to move forward in any capacity, I need the truth." Alex and Luke exchanged glances. For a moment, I thought they'd refuse, make excuses, walk out. Then Alex sank down onto the couch, suddenly looking very young. "Fine," he said. "You want the truth? I'll go first." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, not meeting my eyes. "When your family lost everything, my father sat me down and told me to cut ties with you. Said your family was toxic now, that being associated with them would damage our reputation." He laughed bitterly. "I told him to go to hell. I didn't care about your money or your status." I blinked, surprised. "But then you stopped returning my calls. You'd see me on campus and look right through me. I thought maybe you blamed me, or maybe you'd realized what everyone was saying, that we weren't really friends, just kids whose parents forced them together." He finally looked up. So I got angry. Started acting like I didn't care. Like you were just another person I used to know. "At the dinner," he continued, "when you walked in looking so defeated, I panicked.
I didn't know what to say.
So I fell back on the stupid jokes, the teasing, because that's what we'd always done. I called you one of the guys because I was trying to keep things normal, trying to pretend everything was fine."
He shook his head.
"I didn't realize how it sounded until your face changed. And by then it was too late to take it back. I felt something loosen in my chest. You should have tried harder." "I know." His voice was small. "I know." Luke was next. He sat very still, his hands clasped together so tightly his knuckles were white. "I don't have an excuse like Alex," he said softly. "My father didn't tell me to cut ties. He actually suggested I help your family, said it was the decent thing to do." He paused. "But I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Of you seeing me." He looked up, and I was startled by the pain in his eyes. You called me your brother, but I never saw you as a sister. I was in love with you. Had been since we were kids. And I thought, stupidly, arrogantly, that when everything fell apart, you'd finally need me. That I could be your hero. My breath caught. But you didn't need me. You didn't need any of us. You just disappeared into yourself. And I realized you'd never loved me back. That all those years I'd spent following you around, hoping you'd notice me as something more than sweet Luke, it had all been a waste. So, at the dinner, he continued, voice hardening, when your mother was practically begging us to save you, I wanted to punish you. I wanted you to feel what I felt, rejected, worthless, invisible. I called you cheap because I wanted to hurt you the way you'd hurt me by never seeing me at all. The room was silent.
I didn't know what to say.
I'd never imagined Luke felt that way. He'd always seemed so content with our friendship, so comfortable in the role of the gentle, harmless one. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Luke said. I'm just telling you why. Because you deserve to know. They left after that. Alex reluctantly, Luke without looking back. Mason offered to let me stay longer, but I needed space to think. I spent the next week in a fog. Classes resumed, routine returned, but everything felt different now. The three of them orbited around me carefully, like I was made of glass. Alex would show up with coffee. Luke would leave notes in my bag, apologies, mostly poorly written poetry occasionally. Mason simply existed in my periphery, a steady presence that asked for nothing. It was exhausting and confusing and completely overwhelming. My mother called one evening, her voice tight with worry. Are you all right? Mason's mother told me what happened. Why didn't you tell me you were kidnapped? I didn't want you to worry. I'm your mother. Worrying is my job.
She paused.
Did those boys help you? Yes. And did they tell you the truth? About the dinner? I closed my eyes. You should have told me, Mom. I know. Her voice broke. I know, baby. I watched you disappearing, and I didn't know how else to save you. I thought if I could get them all together, if one of them could break through, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. I made everything worse. No, I said softly. You made it real. You forced us all to face what we'd been avoiding. It hurt, but maybe it needed to happen. We talked for a long time after that. She told me things I'd never known, how Mason had called her every week after I stopped talking to him, asking if I was okay. How Alex had tried to invest money in my father's business anonymously, only to be rejected. How Luke had written me letters he never sent, apologies stacked in a drawer somewhere. They cared about you, she said. They still do. But they're young men, and young men are idiots about feelings. I laughed despite myself. That's one way to put it. The question is, she continued gently, what do you want? Because you don't owe them anything, sweetheart. Not your forgiveness, not your friendship, certainly not your love. Whatever you choose, your father and I will support you. What did I want? I thought about Mason's confession, the pain in his voice when he talked about the walls I'd built. I thought about Alex's panic, Luke's twisted love. I thought about the years we'd wasted, the hurt we'd caused each other. I thought about the girl I'd been, desperate to belong, willing to diminish herself to fit into their world. And I thought about who I was now, broken, yes, but also stronger, clear-eyed enough to see the truth. I didn't need them to complete me. I didn't need their approval or their protection or their love to have value. But maybe, just maybe, I wanted to try again anyway. Not as the girl chasing after boys who barely saw her, but as an equal. As someone who knew her worth and wouldn't settle for less. The next day, I called a meeting. All three of them showed up at the cafe, looking nervous, uncertain. I almost smiled at that. I'd never seen them nervous before. I've been thinking, I said once we were all seated, about everything that happened, about who we were and who we are now. They waited, silent. I forgive you, I said simply. All of you. For the dinner, for the distance, for the hurt. I forgive you because holding on to it was killing me. But forgiveness doesn't mean things go back to how they were. Mason nodded slowly. Alex looked like he wanted to argue. Luke just stared at his coffee. If we're going to be friends again, real friends, things have to change. No more games. No more saying cruel things and calling it teasing. No more assuming I'll just forgive anything, because we have history. I met each of their eyes in turn. I want honesty.
I want respect.
And I want the space to figure out who I am without your family names attached to mine.
We can do that, Alex said immediately.
Can you? I challenged. Because the moment things get hard, the moment your pride gets hurt, you all retreat into cruelty. I won't accept that anymore. What about? Luke trailed off, then gathered courage. What about more than friendship? My heart skipped. I knew what he was asking. What they were all asking, really, even if only Luke was brave enough to say it out loud. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe someday. Maybe never. But I need time. I need to find myself first, separate from all of you. And you need to figure out if you actually love me, or just the idea of me. Mason smiled then, really smiled. Warm and genuine. That's fair. And somehow, that smile meant more than any confession. We talked for hours after that, really talked about everything we should have said years ago. It wasn't fixed, nothing was fixed. But for the first time since the dinner, since the kidnapping, since my world fell apart, I felt like maybe it could be. Maybe we could find our way back to each other. Or maybe we'd discover we were meant to part ways. Either way, I would be fine. Because I'd finally learned the most important lesson. I didn't need them to save me. I could save myself.